Hello, welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I'm Tina. Today I'm here to talk about an important question. The question is, what is the deal with romance fantasy, and romantasy? What are they? Why are they different? Are they the same? I am going to let you know. I'm sure there are tons of videos about this, and I'm probably late to the party, but as I always say, the party doesn't start until I get there, because I bring the weed. So I figured I'd do one as well about this topic. So what is the deal with these three genres? If there's fantasy and a romance, is it automatically romantasy? Why did romantasy come about? Why do I not prefer one of them in my reading? Big questions. So, fantasy often has romance subplots, but in the last few years, romantasy has exploded in the industry, primarily thanks to TikTok. I don't have the TikTok. I joke that I'm too old, but in truth, I consider it a waste of time. I have a limit on my Instagram, 25 minutes a day, including posting my book stuff. So that's enough social media for me. I'm not trying to condescend to anybody here. I got other things I got to do. Anyway, romantasy blew up because of TikTok and because a bit of Instagram, because influencers were propping up these novels and thus making them sell more. But why are they popular? I have my theories, which I'll get into, but first, what are the differences between these three subgenres? So, romance in a fantasy setting. These are romances with a capital R. They follow the 3-act structure for the most part. They have some sort of trope, enemies to lovers, grumpy sunshine, whatever. Seen less often in fantasy is ones you get in contemporary a lot, like brother's best friend or friends to lovers, second chance. But they exist too. And they have a happily ever after. This is pretty much a requirement of romance that the couple gets together, or at least happily for now, in the terms of a series or something like that. As such, the romance is the main plot. It is the point of why you're reading it. Whether there is sex depends on the book. Some books tend to be closed door. Some tends to just be very clean, meaning they just have some smooches. Some are steamy and some are spicy. Spicy is where they get really into the details. But a romance in a fantasy setting will always have a fantasy world building. Generally not super, super detailed. Like, it's not going to be super complex, but it'll be enough to feel like fantasy. There will be fun side characters. But rarely will you have like a really unique magic system or super deep politics. This is not a critique. I'm just saying that if you want the romance to be the forefront of the story, it has to be the forefront of the story. So you can't spend pages building out the world building, because that's not what the point of the book is. And that's not to say that heavy world building fantasy is better than romance in a fantasy setting. Like, I'm not trying to say that at all. Please don't misread me here. I'm just explaining kind of what this genre is. And then we have fantasy with romance in it. So I love a romance subplot in fantasy, but what I like about it is that it's not a guarantee. For me, I don't care about reading sex. I want to ship characters. I want to ship them as a bonus to the fun fantasy world I'm reading about. While romances in just regular fantasy can be a major part of the character's journey or reason they choose to do something, the romance serves the story. The story does not serve the romance, which is the case with romance in a fantasy setting. For example, Asunder is a book I loved last year. I have it up there. You can't see it. It's on my head somewhere. Whether or not a romance developed in that book, despite my wanting it to, I won't spoiler whether it does or not, I would have loved the story either way, because the setting, the characters, world building were fantastic. Same with Joe Abercrombie's Red Country. There's a great love story subplot in that one, but I didn't read it for that purpose. It was a little bonus. Legends and Lattes. Heavy romance subplot, but the story would exist without it. Justice of Kings has a love story, but it's part of the characterization, not the whole story. So that's the difference. You can have a fantasy with absolutely no romance in it. It's still a fantasy. You can have a fantasy with romance subplots. Still a fantasy. It does not make it a romantasy or a romance. Now we have romantasy. What's that then? It's a fantasy without a guaranteed happy ever after, but where the romance is at the same level of importance of the subplot. So with romance, the romance is this much important compared to everything else. With fantasy, the world building is more important. The romance is barely important. With romantasy, they're on an equal plane. Unlike regular fantasy, romantasy has to have romance, whether the romance falls in the end or not. Which is why it's a blend of the two, and the name really does suit it. This is a very good name for it. I would argue it's for people who want a guaranteed romance, but also want a strong world building. It's for people who want the romance guaranteed to be a feature, not a perk. but they also don't want to just read a romance. They're not reading it just for that. And because they want to ensure there is a romance, because again, not all fantasy has romance in it, or doesn't have the romance featured, or maybe the romance isn't as, as romantic as it could be. Romantasy is a way to get that. Now, romantasy is not a genre that I like, really. I don't want the guarantee that there's a romance. I want to hope that there's a romance. I want to not know the characters are going to get together at all. I want to develop ships myself on characters and wait in anticipation if they're going to pan out. I don't want to know for sure that character A is going to fall for character B. So for me, it's a preference more than anything. Also, a lot of romantasy tends to be YA, and I really can't stand YA. So that's another thing. Now, why is romantasy so popular? Here is my take. Number 1, escapism. The main readership for romantasy is women, specifically women a little younger than me. They gravitate towards this genre for 2 reasons. I speculate as being A, given most of the characters are young in these books, they are nostalgic for their youth and are living vicariously through these young women, primarily, and their love stories with hot dudes. This is not something I'm critiquing. Again, it's perfectly normal to use books to live vicariously, to escape into books. This is totally fine. I mean, we all do it. Men do it too. And just because men aren't doing it with romance, I mean, some probably are too, it doesn't mean that it's of a higher, caliber what they're doing than women reading this. B, they are easy to read. I've read samples of a few of these being like, okay, maybe I should try one. And yeah, they're easy to read. The plot, the dialogue, the concepts. From reviews I've read 2 of the main ones, another reading I've done on this subgenre, they aren't designed to make you think too hard. And this is fine. We need to relax at time. They may still feature stuff like politics or rebellions or what have you, but it's the style that's approachable. In no way am I saying that these books are dumber or something than other books. They know what their audience wants, and their audience just wants to have a good time. They don't want to have to sit there and figure things out. They don't want to have to read something that's going to, super depress them. So the second reason these books are popular is because of traditional values. I can't talk to this firsthand as I haven't read enough of these books to make that sort of connection. Like if I really wanted to, I could get a whole bunch from the library and read them and kind of like make a list of you of why. But Willow Talks Books has a really great video about this. I'll include the link below. I think she did it about a month ago. According to her, apparently romantasy, or at least hetero-romantasy, very much reiterates traditional values, and people who are into that or have that as their worldview find this easily accessible, of course. Compared to a world building where everyone is queer, for example. There are queer romantasy books, but the most popular are quite heteronormative and very much reinforce this idea. The third reason why I think these are popular is because, well, we who use BookTube and Bookstagram and BookTalk are up on trends and what's popular in the reading world. It's our hobby. It's what we're interested in. We follow this stuff because we find it interesting or fascinating or whatever. But the average reader who goes to a bookstore for a book once every 3 or 4 months is not on social media book stuff. They buy a book because of the cover, the jacket copy, word of mouth from friends, perhaps friends who are on BookTalk and mention said romantasy book, or the store suggests it. If the salespeople are told to push BookTalk romantasy, they will do so. These books are popular, so publishers will publish what's going to sell. It is a cycle. I shouldn't have to explain this, but that's why. Publishers see the value in promoting these books because these books get traction, and they want to make money. Romantasy is a trend. That trend will eventually die down, and something else will take its place. Something else people will argue is stupid or nonsensical or make sexist remarks about it or, argue that it's dumbing down literature. This happens all the time. This has been happening ever since books have been invented. So that's the kind of thing I find fascinating about this. I honestly think any reading is valuable reading because I know so many people who don't read at all. And so fine, if you're only going to read romantasy, at least you're reading something. And the thing is, though, too, easy reading books will always overtake more challenging literature in terms of popularity. Hard sci-fi and high fantasy will always be kicking around because, they're staples of the genre and have a readership that's very devoted, but they will never be the most popular trends out there. Sorry to say, they just aren't as consumable or as easy to market because they're complex. You'd have to have a salesperson who really understands the book to kind of pitch it. You really have to make sure you're hitting those markets. And because of the the way that marketing and promotion work now, given the internet, it's really hard to do. But what's easy to do is to create a book that follows the same format as the most popular one on TikTok and sell that and publish that. Unfortunately, that's how capitalism works. If you want to blame anybody, blame capitalism. Yay! Anyway, so I hope that was helpful. If you disagree, if you have more to add to this conversation, I'm obviously not the expert, given I don't even read Romantasy and I barely read romance in a fantasy setting. But I just thought it was really kind of something fun that I wanted to talk about, since I just reviewed Tusk Love the other day. And I was just thinking about kind of the difference between the three kind of subgenres or genres, and I want to talk about it. It's my channel. If I want to talk about it, I will. So thank you, everybody, for checking it out.